Hello?
Hello, Munah?
Yes, hello. How are you?
Oh, I'm so glad you could hear me. I was having trouble calling out. This is Izzy from MMA Jam Live.
Oh, good. Okay. So, yeah, I can hear you fine.
Oh, outstanding. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you taking time out of your Friday evening to chat with us for a few minutes.
No problem. I'm happy to do it.
Definitely. Let's get right into it. Now, your first 20 years or so in this world was full of a lot of unique experiences. You were born in Malaysia. You moved to England. You also lived in New York, California, Texas, before settling in New Jersey. What was it about the Garden State that made you consider it as a long-term home?
Yeah, I mean, it gets a bad rap, but I happen to really like it here. And, you know, I think the major decision to do that was based on my family and siblings being close by. So, you know, my mom and dad, when my dad was still living, they're not far from Cherry Hill, New Jersey. And most of my siblings, not all of them by far, but majority of my two brothers are in Nyack in New York. And my sisters, my elder sister, Rafia, she's not far from Cherry Hill either. And my sister, Deej, is in Suffern. So, you know, it was just sort of an easy decision as far as being close to family and closer to my siblings at that point.
Now, I said that, you know, I'm not joking around, but I'm actually from New York, and so I usually, living in New York, well, pretty much most of my, you know, from the age of, you know, when I was born to the age of 18, I lived in New York, and most people there never decided to move to New Jersey. It was usually the other way around, so that's the reason why I brought that up. But it's always, every time I visited New Jersey, it was always a pleasant experience, so I can definitely understand why you would, you know, decide to settle there.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, I think, again, you know, look, there's different parts of New Jersey, different parts of New York, different parts of Chicago, different parts of, you know, of every state and every town that, you know, may not be the best or the, you know, nicest living or the cleanest or whatever, but I don't know, you know, you just make it what you want to make it. And again, like, to me, the fact that my family is here and I'm in an area where, you know, now I'm only about a few hours from my mom and my sister Rafia, and, you know, less than an hour from my sister Deej and my brothers in Nyack, New York. So I chose this area to sort of, you know, a segue between going to those places. And frankly, a lot of it has to do with probably just the taxes and all other sorts of uninteresting things, you know, like, so it's just a choice of the quality of life as well, you know, and living in the best place for the best bang in the tax dollars and things like that, you know, all that boring stuff. So I'm sure that has a bit to do with it. But, you know, the fact that my family is here is why I'm here, and it makes it a happy place. I mean, I could be in Alaska, you know, as long as my family's around, then it doesn't really matter. So,
well, that makes two of us. I've always dreamed of being an Eskimo, so there's that.
I'm not sure I ever had that dream, but I definitely have had some weird ones. But that's not one I've had yet.
That's funny. Now, I've been to many different cities and countries where the culture of the current city I was in was different than that of the previous city. As a young girl moving around often, how were you able to adapt to your various surroundings?
Well, you know, I have to sort of, I guess, give props there to my mom and my dad, because my father, when he was living, was a translator of, you know, well over 14 languages, and my mom is, you know, this sort of very powerful, interesting woman who would take apart an MGB car and put it back together just because she wanted it to be a certain way and it wasn't made the way she wanted it to be, so she would rearrange it as the way she would like. So, you know, she was more, I would say, silent in the background and quiet, and would sort of take everything in. And my dad was definitely the charmer in the room. And everywhere we went, he's just always had the right things to say, and definitely I think the sort of light in the room. So I was lucky as a kid really to sort of be in their space, and walk into a place where, for example, when we left Malaysia and went to England, the school system wasn't so different because it was still sort of a lot of the British school system. But, the cultures and certainly the way of life was very different. So, but my father just adapted so well to everything and just made it fun to be around everybody. And because he could speak most everyone's language, I just saw him sort of melting in, and I thought, okay, well, I can't speak those languages myself, but, there's always a way as a kid to sort of just start chatting it up and talking to people. And, I think that adults found it interesting that I was like that, and I just sort of made myself at home watching my dad do that, He never seemed uncomfortable with anyone. I mean, he never seemed intimidated or, concerned. I think he just always felt like he had a way to, communicate with people. So I never sort of had that fear of interaction, and I think that's why I was able to settle in to the changes. On top of the fact that when you have that many siblings and you're seventh of 9 of them, they kind of push you in. I mean, anything I ever did, swimming, I was probably 2 and my sister was shoving me in the deep end of the pool and probably hoping I couldn't swim. But, wow, one less mouth to feed or something. I don't know. But, maybe they could get some more toys if I was gone. I don't know. But, it was certainly a little dangerous at times. But there was always a lot of, I think because a lot of them were older than me, there was always a lot of, go on, Munah, just do it. And maybe part of that was just out of their, comedic interest in seeing what would happen. I'm sure they got some good laughs on me. But, I guess I was up for it. I was up for the challenge. And especially if my siblings said, oh, I dare you, oh, you're not going to do that, or I dare you, then I was, I was game. But, surprisingly, I was also like the very, careful kid. I mean, I didn't want to do careless, silly things, that would be dangerous to someone or to myself. So there were definitely boundaries, but I didn't have a problem just sort of going into a room full of people I didn't know.
No, it seems as though you had a very strong supporting cast, a good group of people, obviously your family, your siblings, and your parents. Now, I've spoken to other people, from other parts of the world that move here, and they say that the biggest thing they had to deal with was bullying. Is that something that you had to deal with as a kid growing up in the various places you've been to?
Yeah, I think, I don't ever recall experiencing it in England, certainly not in Malaysia. But, when I came to the U.S. and I was in the public school system, having a name like Munah, my full name, and then having a British accent and, being, I think, new anyway, can pose its own threats to sort of that, the student body that sort of has their little cliques together or whatever. And here comes this girl who, I was a little shy, obviously, but I certainly was personable, and I didn't have a problem talking to people or trying to make friends. But there was definitely a group of girls who just, wanted to make every day of my existence painful. And, from the day I got to school, I remember probably the worst of it was that it actually came from a teacher, not from the kids. So I remember it was my first class, and I had to stand up. The teacher said, come up in front of the class and introduce yourself. And I thought, oh, my God, if this isn't the most sort of embarrassing, humiliating way to start off the school year. And I was sort of shocked that the teacher did that. But, again, coming from sort of like the Catholic school system, you don't say no, you do as you're asked. And So, I got up in front of the class and introduced myself. My name is Munah Holland. And kids started snickering and laughing and saying, well, where are you from? Your name is so weird. And, and the teacher would shush the kids down a bit and continue to ask me questions. Well, Munah, where did you live before? And so I would explain the towns or the places I lived in before. And, a lot of the kids had no idea where Malaysia was or Kuala Lumpur, so they would snicker and laugh. And then the teacher said to me, well, what's your background? And I didn't really understand what she meant. I said, well, what's my, ethnicity? What's my, what do you mean what's my background? What are my religious beliefs? Because I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to bring that into school, but, at least not public school. But I didn't really get where she was coming from, so I asked her, I said, do you mean, what religion am I? Or, what is my family background? I don't really understand. I'm, British, but I was born in Malaysia. And then she started sort of just ask me one question after another. Well, what town are you in now? And do you know the, capital? And, and all these just sort of bombarding me. And I remember feeling really overwhelmed. And I didn't really know. I didn't really know the counties or anything like that when I had moved. It was sort of all new. I obviously knew what the capitals were and things, but, I got really embarrassed. I think I started to sort of get nervous and stutter. And when I was little, I had a lisp, so it didn't help. And so it got worse and worse, and the kids really started mocking me. And even the teacher, to my surprise, was seeming to enjoy it. And I think that was sort of the start of knowing that it wasn't going to be so simple. But after that, I think the teacher backed down, and then it was just a group of girls who sort of liked to make me miserable every day and tried to lock me in lockers and things like that. But that's when my mom said, okay, Munah, this is what you do. She said, the next time this girl, Tara, pushes you or shoves you or tries to put her hands on you, you just grab her by the neck and put her in the locker and you look at her and you don't say a word. This is my mom, okay? Not my dad, my mom telling me this. And my mom made me practice with her, to actually do it at home so I would feel brave enough to do it because I was scared. And she said, I don't want you to squeeze too hard or anything, just enough to scare her. And I want you to just look in her eyes and not say anything. Just look in her eyes for a while, and then you say, don't ever put your hands on me again, and then you let her go. And I was really scared, but we practiced it for a little while, and about 2 or 3 weeks after that, this girl, Tara, had sort of shoved me from behind, and my books went everywhere, and I was very proud of my schoolwork and my books and book covers and all that, and I got really upset and turned around and put her in the locker like my mom said. And I remember being shaking and being really scared. But at the same time, I could see her fear on her face. And I did exactly what my mom said. I just looked at her and waited. And then I said, don't ever put your hands on me again. And then I let her go. And that was it. That was it. That was the end of it. We both went to the principal's office and we had to have that whole meeting. But I was a good kid and the teachers knew I was a good kid. So I think I got a detention day or something. And Tara got quite a bit longer than that because she'd apparently, bullied many girls before. But that was it. I don't think I ever had any other experience after that. I think that kind of set, I think that sort of set the tone for the other girls or whatever, not to, not to mess with me or whatever.
That you certainly handled that situation a lot better than I ever would have. In fact, when I was a young kid, we were in recess one time, and these two people were one of them was holding me through the arms, and the other one was pulling my hair and kicking me in my shins, which is probably why I got shin splints right now, but I can't confirm that, so I don't know. But what I ended up doing, I didn't have any lockers because we were outside, so I did this jujitsu, kung fu, some type of martial art that I probably developed when I was 5 years old. And yeah, that worked. We had the same result, but it just we got through that. We got through it in very vastly different ways.
Yeah, It's it's a tough subject, I think, for a lot of kids nowadays, because I don't know, when I was a kid, if that happened, if you got in a fight, if there was sort of like the meet me after school issue, if you did stand up yourself or you did fight back or something, it was over. It was over, and the next day you're usually friends or whatever, and it just went on. Things went on. Nowadays, it's really difficult. The kids are really, really afraid to get in trouble, and so they won't even as much as speak up for themselves. People say, well, you should stand up for yourself, but you can't just tell your kid that and not explain what that means to them. You have to sort of educate them on verbally speaking up, being appropriate depending on what the bully's doing to them, and hopefully nipping it in the bud before it becomes physical. But, there's certainly ways to speak, with a very authoritative voice and back another kid down, and body language, all those things. But, it's scary for them. I mean, I have kids all the time that we teach who tell us, I'm afraid to say anything or do anything because the teachers tell me if I fight back or if I do anything, that I'm going to get suspended or in trouble. And I said, well, the zero tolerance policy doesn't say you can't speak up for yourself. It says you shouldn't fight unnecessarily. So you don't have to fight, but you've got to do something to let the bully know that, they can't put their hands on you, which is eventually how it ends up. So we try to help them with that, and it's really nice when you can get to a child, and they do actually learn to do it without, physical confrontation. But I also am a believer in, if somebody lays their hands on you and you've warned them, you can't just take a beating. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right at school for kids to take a beating, and then for it to be, well, I'm glad you didn't fight back. Good for you. I mean, like, poor kid has a black eye and he gets sent home, and the teachers say, well, good job, you didn't fight back, or the school system says, I don't think any teacher really feels that way. I think teachers probably would like the kids to defend themselves, but they can't say that because that's not the rule. But it's a difficult thing, for them, and they're battling then not wanting to get in trouble because they're good kids. But the bullies don't ever care about that. The bullies don't care about the rules. They don't care about what the teachers say, and so they get away with it every time. And the good kids, don't defend themselves because they're afraid of getting in trouble. So, you just have to hopefully teach your kids as best you can to speak up and be verbal right away. And as soon as a bully sort of, a kid profiles you the first day of school, as soon as they sort of test you or tease you, you have to immediately have that strong voice and look them in the eye and say, don't speak to me like that. And you have to empower your kids, and you have to back them up, because I think otherwise they'll never stand up for themselves if they feel afraid of mom or dad or the repercussions at school. And hopefully then you can prevent the physical, aspect from happening.
It's interesting that we ventured so far into the realm of bullying and how, we covered it in depth. Now, I mentioned, and in your website, it also mentions that you're a bullying prevention instructor, which makes sense given your knowledge of the subject. Now, my co-host and I were talking about the recent incidents, the situations with War Machine and Josh Grispi, and I mentioned that their actions can be seen as arguably the severest form of bullying. Now, what are your thoughts on those situations, and as a society, how can we learn from it?
Well, gosh, I'm certainly not the only figure out there trying to educate people, and whether we're kids, whether we're adults, there should be a baseline level of respect of each other and respect of boundaries and things like that. But I think somehow, some way, that's been really tainted over the years, and not that it was ever wonderful, but there has to be some level of sort of human respect. And I think that wherever you're coming from as a human being or whatever's going on in your life, it's your issue, it's your thing to deal with, and you have to find the right outlet to sort of get that frustration out in a positive way. And, I think that a kid who's troubled, a kid who, needs to release tension or frustration or anger, people assume never to put their kids in martial arts because they are aggressive, but actually it's the best thing they could do, because it certainly doesn't make a kid more aggressive. It makes them more calm, more confident, the understanding and balance of not misusing what they're learning and using it for the right reasons. Now, that being said, okay, you have to have the right teachers. You can have teachers who abuse that as well. There's certainly martial art instructors that don't teach to be, passive initially and try to do the right thing and try to speak up for yourself. They might be teaching to strike and hit and kick, which I don't believe is correct. I think if you have really strong confidence in who you are and what you are as a human being, you don't need to badger somebody else or beat them down to make yourself feel better. And if you do, then that's your issue. I mean, there's something, deeply wrong inside, because, it's really your problem. It's really your problem. So I mean, as a society, how can we help? I mean, how can we change it? Again, at the end of the day, it starts with, I think, children and their parents supporting them as individuals and teaching them, not to fight, but teaching them to have the confidence to speak up for themselves when somebody tries to degrade them verbally or psychologically, because it's more damaging than it is physically, a punch or a kick or a bruise that goes away in a few days or a week. But if somebody tells you you're ugly and fat every day of your life, you're probably going to grow up and believe that you're ugly and fat, even if you're not. So, I think that it's got to start from there. And then as a child grows, especially into the teens, there has to be some sort of teaching and level of understanding of human respect and boundaries, and take your anger out in a positive way. Go and do a martial art. Go and do kickboxing. Go and hit a heavy bag. Take out your frustrations in a good way, and then clear your mind and go back to your, daily business without taking it out on your family or your friends or strangers. And, I think that there's so much psychologically to do with that, but I do think it's preventable. I think that, exercise is a huge part of releasing healthy endorphins and feeling great and feeling elated. And I think that, unfortunately, you're going to have people who push you to those limits and who make you feel that you have no choice but to hit or kick. And again, at that point, it depends what the other person is doing. Is the other person pushing me to a point where, I've warned them, I've told them to back off, and they just continue to go, and they're actually trying to strike or kick me? I'm not going to stand there and take that either. But if I've done everything I can in the right way and done the right thing to prevent it, then at that point I have to defend myself, and there's nothing wrong with that. But, just hurting somebody and attacking somebody or taking out your aggression, especially when you know martial arts, to me, oh my God, a martial artist, at least all of them that I know, would never abuse, not a real martial artist, would never ever abuse all of the knowledge and all of the skills they have to hurt another individual, unless you're in competition. If you're in competition, you both agree, and that's what it is. You both know the risks that you're getting into. But true martial artists, and I'm not talking about fighters, I'm talking about true martial artists, learning the real martial art, honesty, loyalty, discipline, integrity, all of those aspects. I don't believe that those people are going to just abuse what they know. But there are people who maybe didn't learn the real facets of martial arts, and they're fighters, but maybe they don't have the core of the martial arts in them, and they don't have the honesty and loyalty in, those parts of it have not been trained into them. And they're going to abuse it. There's always going to be that chance. But I think if you start from, the children up, hopefully it'll get better.
It's interesting you say that, because, I was having a discussion with my co-host, and we feel like sometimes certain people use martial art, to mask who they truly are. And in the case of the individuals that have been in trouble the last couple of days, I think there's a popular opinion that says, hey, these guys were a certain way going in, use martial arts as a way, as an outlet to bring harm to people, And then at that point, it becomes like, wait a minute, now you're using martial arts for bad. But I think it also goes back to the teaching. There's something to be said about positive reinforcement and the instructors being that positive role model. So I feel as though an instructor, a very good instructor, is just an extension of what someone's parents should be.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely agree with that. And I find it really hard, again, in the community that I'm in, with the fighters I know, with, being involved with New Jersey Athletic State Control Board, and at the same time, being a fighter myself and being a martial artist instructor, and, being with a great organization like Tiger Schulman's, where, I don't get it. I don't get, because I know the way we're instructed on how to instruct. I know the way that we believe in, only bringing people up. And do we have kids who come to us who are troubled or who are angry or who are depressed? Or, of course. But I do think, as you said, that the core of it is when you recognize in your students that there is anger or frustration, you've got to make sure you teach them to really find some kind of inner peace and strength and confidence. And you've got to teach that, out of them, if you will, but also guide them not to misuse it. And if you sense, as an instructor, you can sense when somebody is abusing their skills. You can look at them when they're sparring or when they're doing their jiu-jitsu. If they're constantly just abusing every single partner in the class, not considering that, let's say, their partner might be a brand new student who's just learning some moves, and you've been there for 5 or 6 years, and all of a sudden you're just choking them out left and right, and not considering how that makes that individual feel, it's abusive. Then it's abusive. And as an instructor, I would know that. I would see that. And that person would no longer be welcome in my school. That person is not going to be somebody. If I can't help them, if I can't correct that in my student, then they can't be my student. Because I don't want to be responsible for an individual like that who cannot see through whatever darkness is going on in them. I mean, there's some limits to that. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I'm not a medical doctor. I mean, but I believe that there are some people you can help. There are some people who can get through that. And there are those people who maybe inherently in them, there is just too much of that. And you have to sense that as a teacher. I think you have to be able to pick up on that, not let it become abusive. And, hopefully you can save that individual and correct it. But if you cannot, then you need to not allow that person to learn the skills that makes them, even worse. I mean, the skills that make them not only an aggressive person, but an effectively, dangerously aggressive person. And again, I don't know how that happens. I can't even conceive of it in what I've been doing and what I've learned, because never, ever a single moment went by in any of my training where we were not constantly told about having that boundary and not misusing it and using it to help others, lose weight and get in shape and feel great and, gain confidence through learning a self-defense because maybe they do have anger or fear. And all of those things can manifest dangerous tendencies. But if you learn to, drive it in a positive way, I have to believe that a great instructor can guide that person. Or you just didn't pay attention enough and didn't care enough to correct it, and now that individual is dangerous. But, I can't even, it's sort of amazing to me because in my environment, I have never, ever met somebody who would take it to that level. Nobody ever taught in any of our schools suddenly would ever do something like that. So I don't know. I can't really, I think it's fairly disgusting for the community of martial arts because it doesn't speak well, doesn't speak well of it. And it's sad because most of us are not doing those sort of things or would never do something like that. But when it happens, it doesn't speak well of it, It represents it in a bad way. So I hope people can see past that and obviously make their own minds up about continuing to do a martial art or venturing into becoming a martial artist and finding the right place for them.
As an instructor, a teacher, a student of the game, how easy is it to see that someone has that big of a problem, and how correctable is it even, like, how is it even possible to correct the situation?
Gosh, again, after doing this for 20 some odd years, and of course my husband for even much longer, I don't know these people personally, and I don't know what kind of other things are going on in their life, but I can speak from our own experience and from our own students and say that I know that people can come out the other side of that. I know that there are people who've had really bad things happen in their lives that they could have turned out to be, that person. They could have turned out to be that horrible person who, plays the stupid knockout game, okay, which is a whole other story.
Oh, yeah.
They could turn out to be that kind of person, and they didn't. And they didn't because they had the guidance of really good instructors who ensured that they didn't. We are secondary parents in a lot of ways, and there is some burden on our shoulders with that. And I'm not saying that's easy, but if you can't handle it, then you can't be an instructor. If you're not willing to sort of do that, then you're not an instructor. You can't really do what it takes then, because it's equally, a parent has such a difficult job. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to raise kids nowadays, especially, and to raise them, I think, in a really positive way. But as an instructor, if you're not willing to go there and really help a person change their lives, if you can't, open up your heart enough to do it or your mind enough to do it, then you're in the wrong business. Then maybe you should sit behind a desk or something. I don't know. But, there's a lot of responsibility. You have to be willing to do that. And at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, you have to also recognize when you can't, when that person is not willing to go there with you. There's sometimes when they're not. And if they're not, then you can't allow them to be in your school and hurt anyone else who's there, or learn from you and have skill on top of the other things going on. You have to really be paying attention and having constant discussions with, that person or whatever. So.
No, I want to get back to a positive atmosphere here, and I really thank you for your incredible insight on bullying and everything that comes with it. I mean, it's definitely a very sensitive topic, is one that's not as cut and dry as we make it out to be. It happens to be one of the most complex things that happens on a daily basis. I mean, even right now, there's literally thousands upon thousands of people being bullied at this very moment. So it's very complex. So I thank you so much for your insight into that world.
Of course. Yeah, but let's get on a happy note. Let's get on I'm a positive person. Let's work for the positive, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm happy to be talking to you. I'm just sad because of the whole bullying thing. I don't know. I'm confused.
No, I'm very happy, but I do get very passionate about those things, and I start to feel like my inside's getting very warm because I just have so much disrespect really for people who take advantage of it. So, but look, there's always positives that come out of those negatives too, and speaking about it is a really important thing, because then other people know and can talk about it, and talking about it, relating to it, understanding it, all of that will help hopefully decrease the incidences,
Definitely. I could not agree more. So with that said, I'm going to ask a really ridiculous, happy question. It's probably the most ridiculous thing you're ever going to be asked. If a fan, yeah, I usually don't do this, but I have to get light in the mood here after all the bullying talk. If a fan
go for it.
Oh,
out of a family of 9, there's probably very little that you could shock me with, so go ahead.
If a fan were to spend a day with you, what would they expect to see in the day of the life of Munah Holland?
Well, you know what? It always starts with training every morning. So I get up every morning, and I always have a really good breakfast. People who, fans who follow me on Twitter or Instagram, they know. I mean, I'm definitely a creature of healthy habit, and I definitely get up, have a great breakfast, go to training every morning. It's at least 2 to 3 hours of jiu-jitsu class or kickboxing classes, and then strength and conditioning. And then off I go after that to our school in North Plainfield, New Jersey. And we start the day with teaching with the kids and incorporating managing the school as well as teaching and assisting. My husband is the head instructor, so he does the majority of the teaching. And, with 300 plus people there, there's a lot of communication necessary. So I don't have a lack of words. And I like talking to people. I got my dad's knack for that. So, and I like listening to people. I like listening to what they're saying. So, we sort of go through the whole day. And in a day, curiously enough, somebody who's with me or next to me would see that there are hundreds of conversations I have in the day with parents and with kids and with adult students. And a lot of them are very psychological. They're coming to me for support, or they're coming to me for help with their kids, or, it's not always bullying. It's not always that. It's sometimes just behavioral, how a kid is behaving at home. They're not listening. They're not cleaning up their room. They're not doing as they're asked to do, or they're being disrespectful in some way, or they're going through some, stage of wanting to give up on themselves. And, it's my job, my duty, if you will, to help them find a way to overcome that and to be patient and to help the parent, but also to especially help that child. And, they respect us and they love what we do with them, and we're compassionate but also strong on them, and they're willing to listen. And so that's an important tool, that we have with the parents and with the students. So somebody would sort of see all that. And, I'm at the school, from, 3 o'clock to, 11 o'clock at night, eating literally every 2 to 3 hours while I'm there, getting in whatever food I can while I do all these other things. And then, then it's off to home and sleep and back up for training the next day. So it's not glamorous, guys. I'm sorry. It's not, it's not like Hollywood or anything. It's I'm just living the life of a martial artist, of an instructor, and of a fighter. So, people would see there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work, and it's good, healthy, happy. The school is a wonderful place to be, and it's really what keeps me going. So I'm lucky that I have that.
Okay, I'll tell you right now, that is significantly better than my average day, which consists of waking up, going to work, talking to myself for 8 hours while at work because my mind won't shut up, coming back home, doing absolutely nothing, being very good at doing nothing, and that's it.
Yeah, I don't actually have time to think so much about any of that stuff. So it's good. Like I have a career where I get to enjoy what I love, which is competition also. But the school and teaching is such a positive, happy thing. And even when the conversations that I might have are tough or emotional, I'm connecting with people and I'm helping people, get over whatever obstacle it may be going on in their lives at that time. So, and I'm no guru or anything. I just really like people and I like to help people. So I think that they sense that, and I think that they can see, I'm very honest about what I say. I don't say things to hurt people, but I'm honest. And, if I see something, I bring it out, but I also give them a solution or try to help them find a way through it. So, I consider myself very fortunate because if I only had one thing to focus on all the time, maybe I wouldn't appreciate it as much. Maybe if fighting was all I ever had to do all the time, maybe I wouldn't appreciate it as much as I do. But when I do get to fight, it's very exciting. And that's because it doesn't always happen for me all the time that I would like it to, And then I also have this school, which is, it's a very fulfilling place, that you really can change people's lives in such a good, positive way. So I think that, again, that's what inspires me. Everybody always wonders, what inspires you? But it's really the kids and the students because they're constantly evolving along with us, and it's a beautiful thing.
It's funny because that's usually a general question I like to ask people, what inspired you to do something, but based on the passion to which you speak and the way you talk about the bullying your students and everything, it's fairly obvious what your what your passion is and why you got into the sport to begin with. So that much is crystal clear.
Yeah. Yeah, and thanks to my sister, really, Rafia. She's the one who pushed me to do it. I talk about her all the time. I mean, she was the reason I even stepped onto the mat at Tiger Schulman's, and the reason I even thought I was capable of doing it. I mean, I was 180 pounds at the time I started, and I was in the worst shape of my life, and yet my sister was convinced that, I would be great at it, and I thought I would suck, and she thought something else, and, here I am, and so I have to thank her for that, because I'm really happy in what I do, and, sometimes you get really physically exhausted or tired or whatever, but at the end of the day, I'm very grateful that, I don't have a desk job and then I'm not working 9 to 5 and miserable in my job. I love what I do, and days that are hard, but they're still really rewarding, and that's important.
Without a doubt. Before I let you go, and this is probably the most important question I have to ask. If I don't ask this, your fans are going to be furious. When can we expect to see you back in the cage? I think that's probably the biggest question that people want answered.
Yeah, I'd love to be there tomorrow. But, I think Invicta is still working on everything for another show. So they got the September show. And, of course, there are a lot of girls who hadn't fought I fought in December on that show, right? So a lot of the girls hadn't even fought since before December. And so I think, they had to get all those girls first. And so, I'm hopefully going to be on the next show after that. And I don't have a date yet or anything from Invicta, but I'm sure they'll announce it when they do. And, they wanted to initially put me on this show, and we couldn't work it out. But, whenever their next show is, the hope and the plan is for me to be on it. And people will definitely see me back in there. Until then, I am, reaching out, thank goodness for Invicta being very open about allowing me to fight outside of the organization. I will be fighting in Manhattan on October 17th at the Combat at the Capitale, which is run by Louis Neglia. And I'll be fighting Jenny Nadal, and it's going to be a pro kickboxing match, but it's really great because it keeps me busy, it keeps me going, keeps me in the ring, you know what I mean? It keeps that whole mindset. And so, I'm very happy about that. And also the Ring of Combat in New Jersey, Louis Neglia also runs that event, and he's always looking for me. So if a girl happens to jump in there and take that opportunity, I would stay busy there until Invicta can pick everything up with me again. So, we're just waiting. I'm just waiting in the wings for the good news, and, the fans too. It's tough for us fighters. We don't always get the fights we want when we want them, and there's a lot of patience involved. And, I'm not at 115-pound weight class, and I'm not 135, right, which are the weight classes in the UFC, for women. So I'm smack dab in the middle, and few people have tried to sway me one way or another, why don't you do, but I know where I fit. I know what's best for me, and I know what's really good for me as a fighter. I'm not really like young in the sense of a fighter anymore. So I know what I want. I know what's best for my body. I know what's best for me physiologically speaking, and cutting below what I'm doing is not going to happen. And going to 135 is not in my best interest. So I'm going to stick to my guns, and and hopefully Invicta will get things sorted out for me to get in there soon. But I will certainly be fighting. I just may not be on that card, right away.
Well, it's good to know that you're going to remain active. You got the kickboxing event, and it's great to hear that you're active. But before we let you go, Munah, can you remind our listeners where we can find you on Twitter, Facebook, any other social media site you may be a part of?
Of course. It's Twitter. On Twitter, it's Munah, MUNAH_Holland. And Instagram, it's just Munah Holland. And certainly, you can always reach through our Facebook, which is actually our school, Tiger Schulman Facebook. That's Tiger Schulman's of North Plainfield, New Jersey. That Facebook page, it's indirectly the school, but you can always reach me through there as well. And almost anything related to Tiger Schulman's I'm always involved with. So if you can't get me directly through those things, you can always find a feed through them. And, you know, I like to be as active as I can. I'm not quite as good as Felice Herrig. I have to give her a lot of props because she's really phenomenal with the social media. And, you know, I'm still learning a lot about it and trying to be really active on it. But I really appreciate all the fan support and, you know, staying in touch with me also. I do appreciate that a great deal.
Well, thank you so much, Munah. It was a tremendous joy speaking to you. Very insightful stuff. I could have done this for 2 or 3 hours, but, you know, I get carried away a little bit sometimes. But thank you so much. I'm very honored to have you on, and I hope that, you know, we can do this again down the road.
Oh, absolutely. I thank you very much for your time as well, and have a great evening, and try not to talk to yourself too much when you're alone by yourself.
That is the best advice I've received ever. That's good advice right there. I'll try.
Oh, thank you so much. Have a great evening.
You too, Munah. Take care.
All right. Bye.